They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. A day when the world seems to pause just to celebrate your joy, your love. But for me, that day marked the beginning of a silence so deep I could barely breathe inside it. My name is Lara, and I am 26 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, in a quiet house on the edge of the city where the cicadas sing louder than the cars. If you had met me years ago, you would have seen a girl with dreams stitched together out of simple things, laughter at the dinner table, a safe home, a hand that held mine through storms. I grew up in a small house with thin walls but big hearts. My parents didn't have much, yet our home was full of warmth. The kind of warmth that makes you believe everything will be okay. When I was a little girl, my mother used to tell me stories about her own wedding. How she had been nervous but hopeful, how her heart had fluttered when my father looked at her. I used to imagine that moment for myself, standing in white, surrounded by flowers, my heart filled with love and the promise of forever. I didn't know forever could break before it began. It all started with a conversation one quiet afternoon. My father came home early from work. His shirt smelled faintly of engine oil, his hands rough from long days. He sat at the kitchen table, his face calm but serious. "Lara," he said, "there's someone who wishes to marry you." I blinked, surprised. "Marry me?" He nodded, avoiding my eyes. "His name is Ethan. He's the son of an old friend, a good man, stable, with a decent job. He'll take care of you." I didn't know what to say. The words "take care of you" sounded safe but heavy. My mother smiled softly beside him. "He's a quiet man," she said. "Serious, but kind." Kind, that one word made me agree. I met Ethan twice before the wedding. He was tall, with sharp features and eyes that seemed always halfway closed, as if he were thinking of something else. He didn't talk much. When he did, his voice was calm, almost cold. I told myself he was shy. I told myself love could come later, that it often grew after the vows, not before them. A month later, I was standing under the soft glow of wedding lights, wrapped in a dress that felt both too heavy and too perfect. People smiled. Music played. My father's eyes shone with pride. My mother's hand trembled when she fixed the veil on my head. "You look beautiful," she whispered. I smiled, though inside I felt like I was standing on a bridge that had no other side. Ethan stood at the altar, expressionless. He didn't look at me when I walked toward him. He looked past me, as if I were part of the ceremony, not the reason for it. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. Marriage was duty, wasn't it? Love would come in time. When the guests left and the lights dimmed, the quiet was louder than the music had ever been. I sat in the small room prepared for us, my dress spread around me like a cloud. I waited. My hands were cold, but my heart was full of hope. The door opened. Ethan walked in. For a moment, I thought he might smile. But he didn't. He stood still, staring at me as if deciding something. Then, in a voice so calm it almost didn't sound cruel, he said, "You are not the kind of wife I wanted." I froze. "What?" I whispered. He looked away. "I only agreed because of my parents. I do not love you. I never wanted this." The words landed like stones in my chest. My breath caught, my throat burning. He turned toward the window. "I will speak to my father in the morning. You should go home. Tell them you were not ready." I sat there, unable to move. My wedding dress felt like a cage. My hands trembled, my lips parted, but no sound came out. He walked out without another word. The night stretched endlessly. I sat on the floor until dawn. My reflection in the mirror was not a bride, it was a ghost in white. The next morning, he didn't even look at me. He repeated his words, "Go back to your adults who wanted to learn new skills. It might be good for you," he said softly. "A change of place. New faces." At first, I wanted to say no. The idea of people staring, whispering, it terrified me. But that night I lay awake, thinking about how long I had been trapped inside my pain. Maybe this was a way out, even a small one. So the next evening, I went. The community center smelled faintly of coffee and old books. The white walls were plain, but the air felt alive. People sat in small groups, chatting quietly. At the front stood a woman with short hair and bright eyes. She smiled when she saw me. "Welcome," she said. "You can sit anywhere." I chose a seat at the back, near the window. My hands shook as I opened the workbook in front of me. My heart raced, but I stayed. The teacher introduced the class: reading, writing, communication skills. Simple things, but they felt like stepping stones across a dark river. For the first few weeks, I said very little. I listened. I watched. Slowly, I began to feel comfortable among the quiet hum of learning. People didn't stare at me the way I feared. They were too busy trying to improve their own lives. There was one man who always sat 2 seats away from me, David. He had brown hair, soft eyes, and a calmness that filled the room like gentle air. He wasn't loud or eager to impress. He simply listened, helped others when they asked, and smiled with sincerity. One evening, the teacher asked us to work in pairs. My heart sank. I feared the awkward silence, the judgment. But then David turned toward me. "Would you like to work together?" he asked. His voice was warm, patient. I nodded. We worked quietly, sharing notes, exchanging a few small smiles. His presence felt steady. I didn't know why that steadiness mattered so much, but it did. It felt like safety. That night, I went home thinking about his kindness. Not in a romantic way, but in a human one, the way sunlight warms your face after a storm. Weeks. Adults who wanted to learn new skills. It might be good for you, he said softly. A change of place. New faces. At first, I wanted to say no. The idea of people staring, whispering, it terrified me. But that night I lay awake, thinking about how long I had been trapped inside my pain. Maybe this was a way out, even a small one. So the next evening, I went. The community center smelled faintly of coffee and old books. The white walls were plain, but the air felt alive. People sat in small groups, chatting quietly. At the front stood a woman with short hair and bright eyes. She smiled when she saw me. "Welcome," she said. "You can sit anywhere." I chose a seat at the back, near the window. My hands shook as I opened the workbook in front of me. My heart raced, but I stayed. The teacher introduced the class: reading, writing, communication skills. Simple things, but they felt like stepping stones across a dark river. For the first few weeks, I said very little. I listened. I watched. Slowly, I began to feel comfortable among the quiet hum of learning. People didn't stare at me the way I feared. They were too busy trying to improve their own lives. There was one man who always sat 2 seats away from me, David. He had brown hair, soft eyes, and a calmness that filled the room like gentle air. He wasn't loud or eager to impress. He simply listened, helped others when they asked, and smiled with sincerity. One evening, the teacher asked us to work in pairs. My heart sank. I feared the awkward silence, the judgment. But then David turned toward me. "Would you like to work together?" he asked. His voice was warm, patient. I nodded. We worked quietly, sharing notes, exchanging a few small smiles. His presence felt steady. I didn't know why that steadiness mattered so much, but it did. It felt like safety. That night, I went home thinking about his kindness. Not in a romantic way, but in a human one, the way sunlight warms your face after a storm. Weeks passed. We often ended up as partners. He never asked about my past. He never looked at me with pity. And that silence, that respect, was what healed me most. One day after class, he mentioned a shelter where he volunteered. We help families, mostly mothers and children who have nowhere to go, he said. They can always use more hands. I hesitated. I'm not sure I'd be good at that, I said quietly. He smiled gently. You don't have to be good. Just willing. The next morning, I found myself walking to the shelter. My stomach twisted with nerves. But when I arrived, I saw people moving with quiet purpose, giving food, sorting clothes, comforting crying children. It was chaos and hope woven together. David met me near the door. You came, he said with a smile. I did, I replied. He handed me a box of clothes. Start here. Fold, sort, whatever feels right. I sat on the floor and began to fold. My hands moved, my mind quieted. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about others. And that, I realized, was a kind of healing too. By the time I went home that day, my body ached, but my heart was lighter. From that first day at the shelter, something inside me began to shift. It wasn't a loud change, not the kind that announces itself with trumpets or tears. It was quiet, like the way dawn creeps over a sleeping city. Soft, but certain. Every Saturday, I returned. I folded clothes, handed out food, played with the children who ran through the hallways with laughter too big for their thin bodies. Sometimes I would sit beside the women, mothers with tired eyes and stories heavier than mine, and listen. Just listen. One woman, Maria, once told me, "You remind me of my daughter." She used to listen like that, with her whole heart. Her words touched something deep in me. For years, I had felt invisible, but in that moment, I was seen. David was always there, moving quietly among the volunteers, steady as a heartbeat. He didn't talk much about himself, but I learned small things over time. He worked part-time at a shop. He lived alone. He volunteered because he said it made him remember what really matters. We didn't speak of love or pain. We spoke of simple things, books, food, the weather, small joys that began to rebuild my faith in the world. But still, there were days when the past returned like an unwelcome echo. Days when I heard whispers on the street, when old neighbors turned their eyes away or muttered under their breath. She couldn't keep her husband. She thinks she's better than everyone. Those words still hurt, but they didn't cut as deep anymore. Because now, I had a different truth to hold on to, the laughter of the children at the shelter, the soft thank yous of the women I helped, the calm steadiness of David's presence beside me. It took me months before I found the courage to speak about that night, the night my life had split in two. We were sitting outside the shelter one quiet afternoon. The sun was low, painting the sky with colors that looked like forgiveness. I was folding a stack of children's shirts, when the words simply spilled out of me. My husband, I whispered, told me I wasn't the kind of wife he wanted. He sent me away the day after our wedding. He said not to tell anyone. And I didn't. Until now. I waited for David to look at me differently, with pity, or judgment, or curiosity. But he didn't. He just sat quietly for a moment, then said, "That's not your shame, Lara. That's his." His voice was soft but certain. You were brave to survive that, he said. And you're brave now, helping others, even when you're still healing. I looked at him then, really looked. His eyes weren't full of pity, they were full of understanding. That moment didn't erase my pain, but it made it smaller, somehow. Sometimes healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about finding someone who sees the wound and doesn't flinch. At the evening class, I changed too. I no longer hid in the back row. I started to raise my hand when the teacher asked questions. My voice trembled at first, thin as glass, but I kept speaking. Each time, it grew stronger. The teacher noticed. One evening, she asked me to stand at the front of the room and read aloud a short piece I'd written about my time at the shelter. My hands shook as I held the paper, but I read. I wrote about the children's laughter. About the feeling of being useful again. About how helping others had helped me breathe after months of silence. When I finished, the room was quiet, then people began to clap. Softly at first, then louder. I blinked back tears. Not because they pitied me, but because they saw me. After class, David met me by the door. You spoke beautifully, he said. I was afraid, I admitted. He smiled. You were brave. That word again, brave. It echoed inside me, filling the places that had once been hollow. Outside the classroom and the shelter, the world didn't change much. The gossip didn't stop. There were still whispers at the market, sidelong glances in the street. Some people even said I was seeing another man too soon. I used to shrink from those words. Now, I walked past them. Because I finally understood, people talk not because they know your truth, but because they're afraid of their own silence. My parents noticed the difference in me, too. You smile more now, my mother said one evening as she poured tea. My father nodded. It's good to see you walking with purpose again. Their pride felt like sunlight on my skin. I realized I had spent years trying to prove my worth to others, to men, to neighbors, to voices that didn't matter. Now, I was learning to live for myself.